After 50 years, Bruce Lee's death mystery solved, and it's terrifying. He was lightning in human form. A force so focused, so precise, it felt like nothing could ever stop him. Bruce Lee didn't just punch through boards. He shattered boundaries, cultures, and expectations. At 32 years old, he was on the verge of something bigger than stardom. He was becoming a movement. And then, he was gone. No accident. No injury. Just a perfectly healthy, hyper-disciplined man who laid down with a headache and never woke up. The world spun with theories, some blaming drugs, others whispering about mistresses, curses, or even murder. But what if the truth was even more disturbing than any of those rumors? For decades, fans have demanded answers. Now, 5 decades later, a new wave of research may have finally cracked the code, and what it reveals isn't good. Because the real killer? It wasn't flashy. It wasn't scandalous. It was invisible. And Bruce Lee never saw it coming. Born for greatness, raised in chaos. Bruce Lee wasn't just born, he arrived like a prophecy. November 27, 1940, San Francisco. The hour and the year of the dragon. In Chinese astrology, that isn't just luck, it's destiny. Power, intensity, greatness. And Bruce didn't just carry that sign, he embodied it. His Chinese stage name, Li Su Lung. Translation, Little Dragon. But his birth name, Li Junfan, meant something deeper, return again. It was his mother's wish that Bruce would one day come back to the land where he was born. What she didn't know was how true that wish would become. Just 4 months after his birth, Bruce's family returned to Hong Kong. And then, the nightmare began. In December 1941, Japan invaded Hong Kong, plunging the city into brutal occupation. Violence, hunger, death in the streets. For most children, this would be a trauma they'd never recover from. But Bruce, he adapted, he survived. He learned. While others played, Bruce studied danger. Where kids chased marbles, he watched soldiers patrol the alleys. His childhood wasn't spent dreaming, it was spent dodging. And yet the camera loved him. At just a few months old, Bruce appeared in his first film, Golden Gate Girl. As he grew, so did his screen presence. By age 9, he was already starring in lead roles. By 18, he had acted in 20 films. But this wasn't a fairy tale, not even close. Behind the curtain, his home life was unraveling. His father had slipped into opium addiction. His school life was unstable. He struggled to follow rules, often caught in fights, often suspended. Bruce wasn't a rebel without a cause. He was the cause. He was wild, untamed, and burning with energy that couldn't be boxed in by grades or punishments. And that chaos, that fire, it would lead him straight into the arms of a discipline that would forever change his destiny and ignite a chain reaction that still echoes today. The rebel, the fighter, the outcast. By the time Bruce turned 13, he wasn't just a teenager with attitude, he was a fuse waiting to explode. His fists became his language. His defiance, legendary. And the streets of Hong Kong were his proving ground. He was constantly in trouble, not because he was weak, but because he was too strong. Too bold, too fearless. Street fights weren't sport, they were survival. But that fire needed a direction. And in 1953, he found it in the form of a man who would change everything, Ip Man, the legendary Wing Chun master. Respected, precise, disciplined. A friend introduced Bruce to him, hoping martial arts could give Bruce the structure he so desperately needed. But Bruce was rejected. Not because of his skill, not because of his attitude, because of his blood. Bruce's mother was part European. In the eyes of Hong Kong's strict martial arts traditionalists, he wasn't pure enough. Let that sink in. Bruce Lee, the man who would later change martial arts forever, was told he didn't belong. But fate had other plans. Bruce's friend spoke up. Ip Man reluctantly agreed to let him train, but only privately. No group classes, no respect. Just a boy and his burning will to prove he was worthy. And prove it he did. Bruce absorbed everything: techniques, philosophy, timing, power. He didn't just train, he devoured Wing Chun like a man starved for discipline. But outside the dojo, the chaos didn't stop. In 1958, a rooftop fight changed everything. Bruce got into it with a rival martial arts school, Cholet Foot. It ended with Bruce knocking a boy's tooth out. The police got involved. And suddenly, Bruce was on the edge of legal disaster. His mother knew if he stayed in Hong Kong, he wouldn't survive. So she made the call. She got him out. But before he left, Bruce made one final statement that would echo for decades. That same year, he became Hong Kong's inter-school boxing champion, defeating the reigning champ in the final round. And then, he won the Crown Colony Cha-Cha Championship. Yes, Cha-Cha. The same fists that cracked ribs could glide across a dance floor with flawless rhythm. Bruce wasn't just a fighter. He was fluid. Grace and violence living in the same body. He was 18 years old, and he had just been forced to flee his home. But what waited for him across the Pacific wouldn't tame him. It would unleash him, breaking every rule. When Bruce Lee stepped off the boat in 1959, he wasn't a celebrity. He was just a teenage immigrant with a suitcase and a second chance. No spotlight, no cameras, no one cheering. Just raw ambition and a chip on his shoulder the size of Hong Kong. At first, he lived in San Francisco with his sister, but he didn't stay long. He moved to Seattle, where his real transformation began. By day, he was a live-in waiter at a family friend's restaurant. By night, he was teaching martial arts in back alleys, parks, garages, anywhere someone would throw a punch and listen. Bruce wasn't just practicing what he'd learned, he was already changing it. He called it Junfan Gong Fu, his own interpretation of Wing Chun. But this wasn't Wing Chun anymore. Bruce was dissecting every move, every tradition. He stripped martial arts of ceremony and focused on what worked: power, speed, efficiency. His first student, a black judo practitioner named Jesse Glover, someone other teachers would have turned away. Not Bruce. He taught anyone, white, black, Latino, Asian, it didn't matter. If you showed up ready to learn, Bruce would train you. That was radical in the early 1960s. And not everyone liked it. Traditional Chinese martial arts circles were furious. They believed their ancient techniques should be guarded, not handed out to just anyone. But Bruce didn't care. He believed martial arts weren't Chinese. They were human. He enrolled at the University of Washington, officially studying drama, but in truth he lived in the philosophy department. He read voraciously. Nietzsche, Krishnamurti, Lao Tzu. He wasn't just building muscle, he was building a mindset, all while washing dishes to survive. He had no money, no backup plan, just iron discipline and that strange magnetic energy that pulled people toward him. And in 1964, that energy exploded. He was invited to perform at the Long Beach International Karate Championships. This was his moment. And he didn't just show up, he stole the show. He did 2-finger push-ups, his entire body balanced on a thumb and an index finger. Then came the 1-inch punch, a move that barely traveled a hand's length, but launched a man across the stage. The crowd went silent, then erupted. Bruce wasn't just demonstrating martial arts. He was redefining them. But that moment of glory? It came with a price. Because the martial arts world had just seen something they didn't understand, and they were about to fight back. The Wong Jack Man fight. Bruce Lee wasn't just teaching martial arts anymore. He was challenging a centuries-old code, and that made him dangerous. Traditional Chinese masters believed Kung Fu was sacred, passed down only to the worthy, to Chinese students only. But Bruce? He broke that rule like he broke everything else. He trained everyone. He opened his doors, shared his secrets, and dared anyone to stop him. And in 1964, someone did. A challenge came from the San Francisco martial arts community. An ultimatum, really. Stop teaching non-Chinese students, or fight. Bruce refused to back down, so the community sent someone to make a statement. Wong Jack Man, a young, respected martial artist trained in several traditional disciplines. No cameras, no media. Just a closed-door showdown in Bruce's Oakland studio. What happened next? Well, that depends on who you ask. Bruce's wife Linda Lee claimed the fight lasted just 3 minutes. She said Bruce charged like a storm, unrelenting. That Wong wasn't ready for Bruce's aggression, and eventually gave up. To her, it was a decisive victory. But not one Bruce celebrated. He was angry, not because he lost, but because it had taken too long. That bothered him deeply. If he was truly efficient, he believed that fight should have been over in seconds. But others told a very different story. William Chen, a fellow martial artist who witnessed the fight, said it lasted nearly 25 minutes. He described it as a chaotic brawl. He claimed neither man clearly won, and that Bruce couldn't land a clean knockout, while Wong, out of respect, held back. Wong Jack Man himself said Bruce ambushed him, offering a handshake, then attacking without warning. He accused Bruce of fighting like a mad bull, wild, aggressive, and without discipline. Wong said he pulled his own punches to avoid hurting Bruce, and claimed Bruce grew exhausted mid-fight, barely able to continue. One fight, 3 versions, no winner. And when Wong later challenged Bruce to a rematch in the newspaper, Bruce stayed silent. Some said it was maturity, others whispered it was fear. But what undeniable is that this fight changed Bruce forever. He realized that traditional martial arts were holding him back. Forms, patterns, rituals, they weren't built for real combat. Not for the street, not for survival. Bruce stopped trying to master one style. He began absorbing all styles: boxing, wrestling, fencing, judo. He wasn't chasing belts. He was chasing truth. And that truth would lead him to create something brand new. A philosophy of combat that broke every rule and rattled every tradition. Jeet Kune Do. Not a style, but a way. But even as Bruce's ideas were evolving, his fame was growing. And soon, so would the pressure. Because while Bruce thought he was in control, the next chapter of his life would spiral into scandal and end in a way no one could have predicted. The Betty Ting Pei scandal. It was supposed to be just another workday. A quiet meeting. A simple script discussion. But it ended with a global icon, dead. July 20th, 1973. Bruce Lee walked into the Hong Kong apartment of a young actress named Betty Ting Pei. They were working on Bruce's upcoming film, Game of Death. Producer Raymond Chow had joined them earlier in the day, and according to everyone present, Bruce seemed fine. No illness. No complaints. Just a man going over script pages for his next masterpiece. But then, Bruce mentioned a headache. Betty offered him a common painkiller, Equagesic, a mix of aspirin and a mild tranquilizer. Bruce took the pill, said he was going to lie down, and never woke up. A perfectly healthy 32-year-old man. Gone, just like that. But what made this even more shocking wasn't how Bruce died. It was where? He died in another woman's apartment. Not at home. Not with his wife Linda, but with Betty Ting Pei, a rising actress nearly 10 years younger than him. And within hours the headlines exploded. Was Bruce cheating on his wife? Why was he alone with Betty? Was this really about a script or something else? Whispers turned into wildfire. Suddenly, the legend of Bruce Lee was pulled into a soap opera, and Betty was cast as the villain. The press swarmed her. Accusations flew. Some said she was his mistress. Others said she gave him something she shouldn't have. And more than a few believed she knew more than she was saying. But Betty denied it all. She insisted they were just friends. That she had met Linda Lee. That she had no romantic involvement with Bruce. She said they worked together often, and that nothing inappropriate ever happened. In interviews, Betty looked haunted. In one painful moment years later, she said, "I know what people were thinking about Bruce and me, and this made me live a nightmare for 10 years. I think it's unfair, not only to me, but also to Bruce. He was already dead. But the rumors didn't care. They clung to her like a shadow. She became the woman who killed Bruce Lee in the public's mind. Even though no proof ever surfaced. Even though medical reports confirmed Bruce died from a cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, still, the doubt lingered. Because to the world, Bruce Lee didn't seem like someone who should die in a stranger's bed without warning, without explanation. So they searched for one. And Betty Ting Pei became the face of a mystery no one could explain. But the real cause of Bruce's death? It might have had nothing to do with Betty. And everything to do with what was happening inside Bruce's body. Something even he didn't understand. The medical mystery, what really killed Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's death stunned the world. But what stunned people even more was the official explanation. Cerebral edema. Swelling of the brain. According to doctors, Bruce had an allergic reaction to the painkiller Equagesic, the same one Betty Ting Pei gave him. They said his brain swelled, and that was it. Case closed. But no one believed it. Bruce was the peak of human conditioning. Fast, lean, unbreakable. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't mess around. So how could one headache pill take down the most disciplined man on earth? That's when people started asking deeper questions. And they uncovered something chilling. Just 2 months earlier, in May 1973, Bruce had already collapsed. It happened on the set of Enter the Dragon. One moment, he was rehearsing. The next, he was on the floor, dizzy, nauseous, losing consciousness. He was rushed to the hospital. Diagnosis: cerebral edema, the same condition that killed him 2 months later. Back then, he recovered. But no one treated it like a warning. No long-term follow-up. No changes to his schedule. No red flags raised. And that might have been the first fatal mistake. Still, the medical theories didn't stop there. Some pointed to marijuana. Traces of it were found in his system. But British pathologist Donald Tier, brought in to assist with the autopsy, dismissed that theory fast. No scientific evidence showed cannabis could cause deadly brain swelling in healthy adults. Then came a more bizarre clue, one that no one saw coming. In 1972, Bruce had undergone cosmetic surgery to remove his underarm sweat glands. Why? So he wouldn't sweat on camera. It seemed harmless at the time, but some experts believe this decision may have sealed his fate. Without full sweating capacity, Bruce's body couldn't cool itself properly, especially during the humid Hong Kong summers. Especially when he was pushing himself through grueling workouts, rehearsals, and filming sessions. This theory, introduced by biographer Matthew Polly, shocked even the medical community. Suddenly, the idea that Bruce died of heat stroke seemed plausible. The symptoms matched: headache, collapse, swelling, sudden death. But it still wasn't the full picture. Then, in 2022, nearly 50 years after Bruce's death, a team of Spanish kidney specialists introduced a theory that might finally connect all the dots. They suggested Bruce died from hyponatremia, a condition caused by overhydration. Too much water. Not enough sodium. It sounds simple, even ridiculous. But it's deadly. Bruce was known to drink huge amounts of fluid. Water, juice, protein shakes, especially during intense training. And if your kidneys can't process it fast enough, your sodium levels drop. Your cells swell, including the ones in your brain. Result: cerebral edema. The same silent killer that took him down twice. Now imagine this. A man who couldn't sweat properly, training in sweltering heat, drinking gallons of fluid to compensate. Already vulnerable from a prior brain trauma. That combination? It wasn't just dangerous. It was lethal. Bruce didn't die from a curse, or an affair, or a single pill. He died from a perfect storm inside his own body. And the scariest part? He didn't even know it was happening. A family cursed by loss, the Brandon Lee paralleled. When Bruce Lee died in July of 1973, the world mourned, but behind the headlines, one woman's world collapsed completely. Linda Lee Cadwell wasn't just Bruce's wife. She was his anchor, his quiet strength, the one who held it all together while he built an empire with his fists. Now, at just 28 years old, she was a widow with 2 children, alone. Brandon was only 8, Shannon just 4. And while the world speculated about Betty Ting Pei and painkillers, Linda had to face something far worse. Explaining to her children why their father would never come home again. But Linda didn't crumble. Despite the grief, despite the media storm, despite the whispers and rumors, she fought. She protected Bruce's legacy. She raised their kids in the shadow of a legend while keeping their feet on the ground. But the darkness wasn't done with them yet. As Brandon grew older, it became clear. He had his father's fire, his intensity, his moves, and his dream. He studied martial arts. He started acting. And in the early 19s, Brandon Lee was finally stepping into the spotlight. Just like his father once did. With his breakout film Showdown in Little Tokyo and a buzz building around him, Brandon was poised for something big. Then came The Crow, a gritty, stylized action film where Brandon played the lead. It was going to make him a star. But tragedy doesn't read scripts. March 31st, while filming a scene, Brandon was shot with a prop gun that had been improperly prepared. Everyone thought it was a blank. It wasn't. Brandon collapsed on set. He never got back up. He was just 28 years old, the exact age Linda had been when she lost Bruce. And once again, she stood by a coffin. Once again, she buried a Lee. Brandon was laid to rest beside his father in Seattle. 2 icons, 2 graves, 1 legacy, shattered twice. The headlines came flooding back. The Lee family curse, the eerie coincidences, the karma theories, the conspiracy nuts. But for Linda and Shannon, it wasn't mysterious. It was devastating. And yet from that pain, Shannon Lee did something extraordinary. She stepped forward, not as a fighter, not as a movie star, but as a guardian. She became the head of the Bruce Lee Foundation, preserving his philosophy, his vision, and his unfinished dreams. And in 2019, Shannon helped bring one of her father's oldest ideas to life, a TV series called Warrior, based on a concept Bruce had pitched decades earlier. She didn't just protect the legacy, she expanded it. And today, through Shannon's work, Bruce and Brandon's voices still echo, not just in action movies or fight scenes, but in the idea that strength is more than muscle. It's about resilience, about standing up again, even when fate keeps knocking you down. But for millions of fans, there was still one question left unanswered. What really killed Bruce Lee? And could the mystery finally be solved? For 50 years, we searched for a dramatic answer. A scandal, a betrayal, a hidden enemy. Because how could someone like Bruce Lee, a man who trained like a machine, lived with precision and fought with pure control,
just collapse and never get up?
But the truth? It's not cinematic. It's not sexy. It's hauntingly human. We now know the answer wasn't one thing. It was everything. Bruce didn't die because of fate. He died because of a series of invisible choices, each one harmless on its own. But together, they became a silent trap. Let's break it down. First, Bruce had already collapsed once, just 2 months before his death. A headache, dizziness, brain swelling, the same symptoms that would later kill him. It wasn't just a warning sign, it was a siren. But no one heard it. No major medical precautions were taken, no lifestyle adjustments. Just back to work. Then came the second choice: sweat gland removal. In 1972, Bruce had his underarm sweat glands surgically removed to avoid visible sweat stains on camera. For appearance, for perfection, for Hollywood. But in the blazing humidity of Hong Kong, with constant rehearsals, filming, and workouts, that decision crippled his body's cooling system. He was cooking from the inside out without even realizing it. And finally, the third piece of the puzzle: overhydration. It sounds harmless, but to the human body, too much water is just as deadly as too little. In 2022, Spanish kidney specialists made a breakthrough. They proposed Bruce died from hyponatremia, a condition caused by drinking too much fluid, too quickly. When that happens, your sodium levels crash. Your cells swell, including those in the brain. And what does that cause? Cerebral edema, the exact thing that killed him. So imagine this: a man who had already suffered brain swelling, who couldn't cool himself properly, who was downing fluids all day during rehearsals, in sweltering heat, pushing his body harder than anyone else ever dared. All of it created a perfect biological storm, one that even Bruce Lee couldn't fight his way out of. And here's the part that's truly heartbreaking. He didn't feel it coming. There was no chest pain, no dramatic fall, just a headache, a lie down, and silence. No rival, no curse. Just a warrior overheated, overhydrated, and overwhelmed by a system that couldn't keep up with his willpower. The man who moved faster than cameras could capture was defeated by something no one could see. And that's why the truth is worse than all the rumors. Because it was avoidable. Because it wasn't betrayal. Because Bruce Lee was more than a fighter. He was a symbol of control, of strength, of overcoming limits. But even he wasn't immune to the limits of the human body. His death isn't just a mystery finally solved. It's a reminder that even legends are human, and that sometimes it's not the blow you see that takes you down. It's the one you never expected. If this story gave you chills, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell icon so you never miss the untold truths behind the greatest names in history. And tell us in the comments, do you believe this is the full truth behind Bruce Lee's death? Or is there still more to uncover? Because the legend may be gone, but the questions, they're just getting started.